Good morning, everyone on Zoom. It appears that Greg is about ready to start the meeting.
Good morning, York East. I apologize for those of you that are eating. We are getting started a little bit early this morning. So once we get through our announcements and our agenda, feel free to continue to eat. But our speaker has asked for a little bit of extra time. So want to honor her wishes. If you would, please join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. I'm going to ask, I don't know if Hunter or Chris is going to do the honors of announcing our guests and visiting Rotarians, but they're both making their way forward. So it looks like Hunter has a challenging duty, and Chris is the one that one person's going to like, and everybody else will dislike.
Good morning, York East. I have the privilege of welcoming several guests today. So please, when I call your name, please stand or remain standing until President Gregg recognizes you. So first off, we have a prospective member, Scott Burford. Morning, Scott. We have past District Governor Ben Hoover from the York Downtown Club. We have Kathleen Stoop, who's the current District Foundation Chair and from the Carlisle Club. And we have Fran Polk, another member from the Downtown Club. She's walking back right now, so sorry about that. Timing's everything.
Everyone, thank you for coming this morning. It's great to see everyone here. So thank you for coming out. Chris, you want to do our 50-50 drawing?
We have a speaker. Right. Left 3 digits is 505.
Oh, Mr. Schmidt. Congratulations, John. Do we have any happy dollars this morning? Friedel. Hold on. You stay there.
I have to stand in a moment anyway.
Yep, that's all right.
My darling husband, can you imagine, for the 3rd time has won the first prize at the York Fair for a beautiful carving that he had exhibited there. And it's just, I think it's such an honor. And he puts all his heart, well, the heart that doesn't belong to me, the part, and he puts that into making these beautiful carvings. Congratulations, darling, for another first prize. So that's $5.
Very good.
That's not finished.
Oh, you handed back the mic.
You can buy lunch from that. Wonderful guests of ours are here this morning. Kathleen Stoop, whom I've known actually before we knew Ben, because we met in Nairobi. And so we go back a long, long way. Ben, of course, is our nearest and dearest neighbor and friend. And Fran is this lovely, lovely lady. So all of them are here, and this is it. Thank you.
Very good. Are you finished now?
Pardon?
Are you finished now?
No, I come back later.
Okay, you'll come back later. See, we need extra time for her this morning. Anyone else? Any other happy dollars? John Schmidt, I can't imagine that you're happy.
You know, spending money, so
That's all right.
to be here.
It's good to see you, John.
Guest speaker.
Karen?
So I wasn't going to be here today, but I'm going to give $5. I wanted to see Friedel's presentation. And then today actually is the 1-year birthday of my grandson who arrived at 8:13. So at this time last year, I was suited up and ready to go into the delivery room.
Awesome. Congratulations. We're glad that you're here. Anyone else? Kathleen? What's that part?
I'm very happy to be here today, to see many friends from the York East Club and particularly to be with Friedel and Bob.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other happy dollars? No? Okay, good. Announcements. Nothing going on? I'll share, I know some people have asked if, how many volunteers we receive for Our Daily Bread and Catholic Harvest. And I think we're in good shape. We might have some repeat people, so we got to work on that a little bit, but we'll get the job done. And we'll get the job done as far as getting new people in to do these volunteer opportunities. But thank you to those that are able to help out both today and tomorrow at Our Daily Bread and Catholic Harvest. Any other announcements? Nothing. Well, Friedel, who's going to introduce you? Bob is going to introduce you. Okay, I'm going to ask Bob to come forward and introduce our speaker this morning.
Thanks, Greg. Good morning, everyone. Three pages. My wife wasn't certain that I could introduce her properly. Our speaker today has a sign on her refrigerator that reads, "I kiss better than I cook." And I can attest to that fact. But there's a lot more that she can do than better than cook. She can tile her own bathrooms. She can repair the roof. She can build a 20-yard long swimming pool. She can change tires. She can weld whatever needs to be welded. She even brought her own torque wrench to the marriage, which came as a part of her dowry, and she knows how to use it. Because in Nairobi, skilled labor is hard to find. She is also a gifted interior designer, a hobby anthropologist, a passionate researcher of history and of medicine, her primary interest. And as you know, she has been a dedicated Rotarian, although in name only, for much of the last 40 years. She actually scrubs up quite well when she meets the good and great of the world, according to her late husband, whose statement I fully support. From Her Majesty, the Queen of England, to the former Prime Minister, Maggie Thatcher, from His Highness, Aga Khan, the god of the Ismailis, to ex-President Jimmy Carter, who in 2000 gave her his direct phone number, just in case she ever came into his neck of the woods. From actors and musicians to NPR celebrity Scott Simon, who later spent a weekend with his family and us at our home on Chincoteague, she has rubbed shoulders with many celebrities. I should also mention that she is the consummate hostess, providing I do the cooking, who leaves nothing to chance when spoiling her guests from around the world. And as some of you have already guessed, she is not only a passionate storyteller and writer, but a best-selling author in Germany, where she received, among numerous awards, a prestigious commendation from the Institute for Literature of the University of Munich. From the English Writers Forum, she received a coveted prize for a poem for grief-stricken children, which has made its way around the world. And since she moved to America, she has even had an article published in the New York Times. After moving to Kenya in the early 1980s, she and her husband, John, traveled the world, exploring some of the most fascinating corners of our globe. They attended almost a dozen Rotary International conventions. And thanks to her international lifestyle, she has met altogether 33 RI presidents, although not necessarily during their years at the helm. I even enjoyed the reflected honor of sitting in the same bathtub where RI President-elect Sam Awori had often taken a bath when he was a guest at Friedel's beautiful home in Nairobi. Tragically, Sam died in 2017, 11 months before his famous smile could mesmerize the Rotary world. In 2008, Connie, our co-member of this club, Connie Spark, persuaded me to join her team for a medical mission to Nairobi with the prophetic words, "It will be a life-changing experience." Well, it certainly was. Little did I know that, and her Friedel into a crowd of more than 200 guests at our farewell party in Nairobi, organized by her club, I would tell my roommate, Pete Lutz, when I returned to our hotel that night, "I've met a woman with whom I want to spend the rest of my life." I give you our fellow Rotarian, Friedel, whom I have been proud to call my wife for 10 years, 11 weeks, and 2 days. Friedel.
Can you clip it on?
I will, yeah.
Close to here.
Okay, that should do it.
Maybe, can you hear me like this? Wonderful. I will try and speak slowly as special requests. But first of all, thank you, darling. You know why I married him. I don't know why he married me, but like my late husband said, when anybody asked him, I only married her for her brains and her driving license. That means he could drink at any party. And other than that, my brain could fix everything that needed fixing. So he was one of those people who were utterly British. He was in his former career an officer of the British Navy. And so you can imagine they don't come very soft skinned. So he was like this. He would fight any fight with words. It was a wonderful life we had. But anyway, I'll have to go back. You will get a little bit. You will get to know him a little bit during this presentation. And I think this is where I should start. Can you hear me when I turn around? Yeah. So these are my 40 years. It sounds presumptuous to say 40 years because ladies weren't allowed at Rotary then. But I arrived in Kenya from Germany. Down to Kenya was my first journey. The next journey was to America, and here is where I am now. But my journey to Rotary started with a tragedy when I lost my first husband. And my parents obviously felt that I wasn't going to pull through. And they decided to call a friend of the family, our whole family. And he lived in Kenya. He had chosen Kenya as his country after he'd seen the world several times over. And so my mother told him, just pick her up. I just keep her alive. I don't care what you do, just keep her alive. Well, I think he misunderstood and he married me instead. So that's how I got to Kenya. And this is the green city in the sun. And it is a beautiful place. It still is beautiful. But of course, there are lots of problems there, as you can imagine, like everywhere in the world. But here, it's a conglomerate of issues that we had to deal with at Rotary as well. Now, this was my home for 33 years, which now, when I arrived 5 acres, all ours, beautiful. Now encroachment is everywhere. And so it doesn't look the same anymore, as you can imagine. When I was there, of course, the first thing my husband said to me, I'm a Rotarian. Hello? You are what? Well, I'm a Rotarian. So he had to explain to me that meant I'm not part of it. I said, you're not serious. No door has ever been closed on me. When I want to go somewhere, I will go. And he said, well, in Rotary, you know, they don't allow ladies. I said, but why? Well, he said, for us, the reason is we can't tell the same jokes that like we would do when it's just us blokes. Okay, well, after the ladies were allowed, we could make them blush anytime. We knew much better jokes than they did. So anyway, they didn't want us. But, and of course, the lady issue has gone back all the way to the beginning of Rotary. And in 1911, the ladies in Duluth already formed a ladies' Rotary club. It fizzled out later, it was disallowed, but they tried. So it wasn't for lack of trying, but we didn't make it until 1989. So instead, of course, I was told you can join the inner wheel. What do they do at the inner wheel? Well, they knit socks and they make cakes. I said, nobody can ever wear a sock that I knit because I've only ever knitted one and I still can't find a man who fits into it. And I said, cakes, if they bring chisel and hammer, they can eat it. But other than that, out of the question. So I was not inner wheel material. I wasn't fit for that. And what we had in Nairobi was a special inner wheel because they first, during the war, they formed a ladies' club, which they called N Club. I don't know whether you are aware of the N's, but we, the older folks or ladies, we were all called N. So I was never called Friedel, I was N Friedel. Why is that? Well, at the beginning of Rotary in 1916, they had a district convention, a Rotary convention where they all got together on a train, they picked it, the train was like a pickup. At every station, more Rotarians came along, and the first wife that came along was N, and the second wife was N, and the third, and so then they decided, well, let's call them all N. I mean, we don't want to be bothered with different names, let's call them all N. So since then, we are Rotary N's. If we're lucky, we have our name attached to it, but normally you're just an N, you're not anything else. So inner wheel was not for me, as I said, but I had a very dear friend, my first friend in Nairobi, whom I met. She was the wife of the Austrian ambassador, and friends for life, of course, she still is my best friend, among my best friends. And so we decided we do all the rest the others don't want to do. So what we did is it was terrible. A container load arrived from England, from Bristol, where they had collected calipers and limbs, artificial limbs. Now, these were all going to go out to the places where disabled children went to school, where they were in hospitals. So what to do? Well, we had to go through this container and find out which school we could supply and how the sizes might fit and load our car and be on the way, sometimes 100 miles up the road. No problem, but Sissy had a diplomatic license plate, so we could drive anywhere. The problem was the smell. The stench of these limbs was absolutely nauseating. So we didn't know what to do. Windows open, didn't work. Nothing worked until we had a big blanket made from leather and put it across all the stuff that we had in the car. Now we could deliver everywhere. So Sissy and I went across country with our limbs and calipers. And also I had the, if you might say, foolish idea to take the slum kids to the museum in Nairobi, because I also became the chairlady of the Museum Society. And as such, I thought, the slum kids really don't know what treasures we have here. They see the dirt, they see the rats and mice, they see everything that's bad, but do they know what an elephant looks like? And at the museum, we had we had these animals preserved and stuffed out, and they were on display. So every time we did this, I took about 300 kids from the slums. We had buses organized, and most importantly, we had a big lunch organized, and they could eat to their heart's content, which was probably once in a year they could do that. And so we took them to the museum. But in comes Rotary, because it didn't cost much. It cost about $3 per child. But I said to my husband, well, you are a member of the trustees, of the board of trustees of the charitable trust. Don't you think this is a worthwhile project? Oh, I don't think so. I said, I do think so. I said, I give you a few arguments, and these kids need to know something. And it was incredible. To the day I left Nairobi, there would once in a while some strapping lad come up to me and he said, you took me to the museum when I was a little nipper. Ah, did I? He said, it was lovely. I'll never forget it. And we took home so much food. He said the whole family had food and had something to eat. So the museum was a huge success, and I kept that going for many years. So a lot of kids had the chance to see not only Ahmed, who was one of the most famous ones, because he had the longest tusks that any elephant known to living people had. Now, here comes a problem we have with Nairobi as far as the district is concerned. Our district went all the way from the Horn of Africa almost to the toe of Africa. And that's about 4,000 kilometers. So it's no mean feat to just go and visit another club, visit another country, visit another district, another end of the district. This was all our district 920. And from here we go, here are the countries that are involved, and I've marked it around there so that you have an idea how much is entailed. And here I put America in perspective to our district, as it was then. It's since been cut. But also there was a problem, we had different languages. We had English, we had French, we had Creole French, we had the Malagasy French, we had all sorts of people that were speaking different languages. So the programs had to be printed in 3 or 4 different languages whenever we went to a district conference. And of course, when there were lectures being given, we had to try and muddle through, have some translation done. Sometimes it should just read the lips and hope for the best. Now then, what we did is, of course, in Nairobi or in Kenya, in 1974, long before my time, 10 years before I came, the president of the country decided there is only one president in this country, and that is me, Jomo Kenyatta. So Jomo Kenyatta put out a decree that nobody, whether you're a bank president, a company president, any president, or certainly not a president of a Rotary Club, would be allowed to be called a president. So suddenly they all had to become chairman, meaning that we can't just change our title. Rotary International had to be involved, and a request had to be put out, can we do that? So, of course, Rotary had to say yes, because the country supersedes every other decision. And because of that, between 1974 and 2005, all the presidents of every club, Rotary Club, were called chairman. So my husband was never a president, he was always a chairman or a past chairman. But the thing was, in a very daring move in 2005, at the time when our president was called Kibaki, who was a bit malevolent and he let things slip at times. And at one of our conferences, one of our Rotarians had the nerve to say, and by the way, Your Excellency, what about, getting our title back? And he looked at him, whether his head should come off or whatever the decision should be taken. And then he said, why not? And the deal was done. So we got the title back, not just for the Rotary clubs, but for everyone. So every bank director, every head of the bank would be called president. All goes back to normal like in the rest of the world. But as my husband, you can see on the right, he is past chairman of the Rotary Club of Nairobi. Now, a district conference were nothing like this here. For example, for the district conference in Arusha, we would all bunk together. We would hire a bus, all the troops from Nairobi, we would hire a bus, we would go to Arusha together, 4.5 hours drive. And then we had word from Arusha, can you please bring sugar and toilet paper? Well, Arusha, the economy was on its knees. It was ruled by communism, influenced by communism, let's say. And so sugar and toilet paper, you don't have, we bring. Of course, being Rotarians, we just brought, not just for ourselves, we brought for a lot of stock for those who live there. However, we get there, my husband does what he always did first. Whenever we came to a new place, hotel or whatever it was, he goes to the bathroom and checks the water. So he comes out while the porter is still dealing with our luggage and he said, no bloody tap. So the porter said, Hakuna Matata Bwana, Maji Kwisha. That means no problem, no water. And my husband said, since when? And so the porter says, since Christmas, the other Christmas. So obviously water wasn't part of the menu that we were going to have. We had little bottles that we were given to brush our teeth, and the rest of it, hope for the rain, you can go out and have a shower. Other than that, you stay as you are. Everybody has to accept that. What to do with the toilet paper, we don't know. Normally, we just use banana leaves anyway when we're out in the bush. So anyway, another district conference, they were all, everyone has a story. And at this district conference, we had, which of course was Mauritius, a little island out in the Indian Ocean, about 5 hours flight from Nairobi. And of course, we had a very special relationship with the Ugandan Rotarians, who are a very special breed. As Connie will confirm, they're different to anyone else. Nothing can faze them. They fight their way through, they smile, they laugh, and they sing. So we wanted to fly together with the Ugandans to Mauritius. They come on a commercial flight from Entebbe to Nairobi, and then we board the plane that we had chartered, and we all go to Mauritius. Who doesn't come is the plane from Uganda. Eventually, we get word that all flights have been cancelled because there's been a coup attempt in Uganda. Well, what else is new? So Sam Abori, dear Sam, smiling Sam, was obviously in charge of his troops, and he sent word to us, troops are on the way. So we're sitting at Nairobi airport in our chartered plane, and we wait. It takes 8 hours to drive from Entebbe to Nairobi. So we waited for 8 hours to take our 5-hour flight together. And of course, in Mauritius, they turn up the runway. I mean, when it gets dark, they close down. But this is Rotary, and somebody always knows somebody in authority. And so the airport was open for us when we arrived in the middle of the night, as you can imagine. And it was a lovely time with Sam because my husband and Sam organized the singing. My husband being him, he said, by the way, all you black chaps in the back, because you can sing so much louder. And then you fire everybody up. And they loved it. And they sang and they embraced him. And it was a wonderful atmosphere in the plane and afterwards in Mauritius. It was great. So Sam was our dear friend. And as you know, he died, like Bob said, he stayed with us a few times, and Bob sat in the same bathtub in our house, but Sam died, and it's a real tragedy for Rotary because he would have changed the world in the truest sense of the word. He had that ability just with his smile. Anyway, it was not to be. So this is an island of Mauritius. It's just a spot in the ocean, like I said, 1,000 miles away from anywhere else, but it's beautiful. But again, it was John and Friedel. So I still didn't have my own name in those days. Now, another conference was on the island of Réunion, which is actually a French enclave. It's part of France in every sense of the word, as far as passport is concerned, as far as the law is concerned. And it's down there where the 5 of the 500 is. That's where the island of Réunion is. And so we were going to fly from Kenya via Madagascar under Antananarivo has an airport which we were going to fly to. But as we were starting in Nairobi, the pilot came on the intercom and said, we can't go to Madagascar because they don't have fuel. So we go to the Comore Islands. So down here, Madagascar, we leave it, we start before, we go to the Comore Island, get more jet fuel, and then we can make it to Reunion. In the Comores, we were sitting on the tarmac. This was on an official flight, an Air France flight. You're sitting on the tarmac and you look around what is happening. And then we should have taken off quite some time ago. So my husband goes to the cockpit and he says, comes back and he says, by the way, we're not taking off just yet because the president of the Comore Islands is going to land. And of course, he has top priority. Right. We wait and in comes this beautiful plane and everything is fine. It's a brass band down there in the hall, everything you need to welcome your president of the country back. No sooner had this plane come down, all hell breaks loose and all the troops are marching towards this aeroplane and arresting the president. And they are running over all the instruments that are there, the trumpets and the tombola and everything that was there. What's the word? Not tombola, tuba. They run over everything that's there. And for me, it was the most impressive thing. All these instruments were playing when this plane landed. And suddenly, everything changes in a heartbeat. And so these troops go over, and after that, you see all these flat instruments that were 5 minutes ago beautiful musical instruments. However, the captain came on the intercom and said, we're not allowed to start now because there's trouble in the country. So we are stuck here. Okay, well, we didn't really want to be stuck there, neither did he. And so all of a sudden he said, we're just going. We don't have permission, we just go. And he put the throttle down and off we went in this big plane down the runway without permission, without anything, going to Reunion Island, where we had a wonderful district conference. But like I said, every conference literally had a story. And it was never easy sailing and it was never a smooth ride. It was always something that would go not according to plan. Eventually we got married. And of course, I was mistaken when everybody was cheering and waving and everything. And I was waving back, but I didn't realize they were waving at the car because they loved the Rolls Royce. So from now on, I thought, well, I'm obviously going to be it. I'm going to be part of Rotary. So I started collecting the Rotarian from 1985. So if ever you need anything that you want to look up, I have it. I have every Rotarian from 1985 until now, so that's almost 40 years. And at that time, very interestingly, there's an article in there that they want to have beaten polio, ended polio by 2005. And of course, there sits Dr. Sabin being the one who developed the vaccination, the oral vaccination. And Dr. Sabin's son, by the way, a few district conferences ago, gave a wonderful talk at the district conference that we had in Gettysburg. And it was very enlightening what he had to say about his father. It was a great event. So anyway, now, fighting polio, ending polio looks like this. You can't just say, oh, well, I go and vaccinate people. I vaccinate all the children. This is what we are facing. Then, of course, there's always the question of visitors. Everybody wants to come to Nairobi, including the RI presidents. And so this was a GSE troop from Switzerland. They came, 7 of them. And of course, yeah, where do we put them? Well, everybody should take one. There wasn't anybody who would take one. So it was, well, you take all 7. Okay. Try and find some mattresses that we can put on the floor. They're all young, no problem. So we had 7 of them. And time and again, it happened because we had the space and we wouldn't say no, because these people needed to stay somewhere. So anyway, next situation was we were told, and we were getting so excited, that some clubs in Germany had decided they want to fight the blindness in Kenya, which had really touched one of their members, he was the president at the time of the Rotary Club of Marburg Schloss. And in Kenya, blindness is often caused by the fact that children from the moment they're born are kept in the hut, and the fire is going all the time, but the hut has no chimney and no aeration. So when you pass by all these huts in the villages, the smoke comes to the roof. And so these children are growing up in smoke-infested rooms and environments. So many of them, even the young ones, have cataracts. Now, word was out, there's a team coming for cataract operations. The blind shall see. It was even in the newspaper. Wonderful. We were all geared up and we were ready to roll. And everything was in place, the transport and whatever we needed. Suddenly, we get word from Germany, the project is cancelled. We were absolutely gobsmacked. We couldn't believe it. And to make a phone call from Kenya could take you 24 to 48 hours. And by the time you get through, the other people might be in bed and they won't appreciate you calling even from Kenya. So we tried every which way we could to contact them and find out why was the project cancelled from your side. And we didn't get an answer. All we got was silence. So my husband, being my husband, he said, well, you're German. Well, you're going to Germany next week. Go and see those blokes. I said, what do you think I should tell them? I'm not even a Rotarian, and they don't allow ladies into their meetings. Just go. Charm them off your feet, knock them dead. So anyway, I go to Germany. I call this Dr. Zimmermann, who was the president of the Rotary Club of Marburg Schloss. And I introduced myself, and we had about 2-hour conversation. And he said, why don't you come and speak to us? Yeah. I said, well, is that allowed? No, but I'm the president. He said, and I will announce you without announcing a gender. I will just say somebody is coming from Nairobi to talk to us. I won't say it's a lady. And once you're in, there's nothing they can do about it. So that was a long shot. I mean, I am being brave, but for him to do that, he said, I'm the president, I can do. So anyway, I arrived in Marburg, and it felt like my old home ground because I had spent a little time of my career in Marburg at the Behring Institute. And I actually had lovely contact there and lovely friends. And I walked into this room and Dr. Zimmermann says, well, here is somebody from the Nairobi Rotary Club who wants to talk to us about the project and why we canceled it. And right at the corner there, at the far end, somebody gets up. He's not very tall. And I think, oh my God, it was Professor Dr. Heimburger, the head of the Behring Institute, one of the most revered immunologists in the whole of Germany. He, a little later, a few years later, he got what they call the Freedom Prize of Germany, so the highest honor that the German government can bestow on somebody. So that was Professor Heimburger. He stands up, he looks at me and he said, it's you. I said, yeah, what else could I say? And he looked around and at all his other fellow Rotarians and he said, the project is on. And so the project was on. And that was Heinz Zimmermann and his wife, and we've become the greatest friends. They've been at our wedding, not only here, but also the wedding we had in Germany. They do everything. They were the first friends who came after my husband had died. We are really, really close. That not being enough, when they came here for our wedding, our wonderful nearest and dearest friend, Ben, our neighbor, said, you know, I could take a few of your guests. Wonderful, Ben. Why don't you have another district governor? And so Rotarians with Rotarians. And so they became friends for life as well, just because Birgit and Heinz stayed with Ben and Anne for a week or 10 days, whatever it was, even a little longer. So that was a picture from our wedding. That was in Nairobi And this is what Professor Heimburger gave me a year later when they invited me back officially. Now, even though I was still a lady, I was invited to this Rotary Club that hadn't let a lady into their doors in between. And I was given a plaque by him, which said, to one of my most promising researchers. Okay, of course, I absconded, so I wasn't there anymore, but it was very kind of him and I was very touched by it. But he helped us get this project going. And the project is now, with 39 years, continuous success, one of the longest living projects that RI ever had. And they have operated on 20,000, nearly 20,000, give or take a few, 20,000 patients in Kenya in that time. And there was one person who is very much in charge of it, which is Dr. Joshi, who is a famous ophthalmologist, who now in return, of course, gets equipment from Germany. And he is celebrated wherever he goes in Germany because of being the head of this. So this is the first eye camp we had, about 5 hours drive from Nairobi. And the thing was, when the patients were chosen, no problem, they take everything off. They strip off because they were asked to wash their faces and their feet. Okay, don't ask me why, because I don't want to go into that. But there they were, stark as naked as they were born, but they wouldn't take their hats off. The hats stay on. And there is a tradition about that. The hat is a symbol. And so we had to fight with every single one of them. They have to take the head off before they could go into surgery. Sometimes we just covered it by something else. So anyway, this is what RI says about it, that this noble initiative has not only transferred lives, but also illuminated paths of compassion and. So it's really been a wonderful event, and we are all happy about that. But the thing, of course, is in our club, in the Rotary Club of Nairobi, what to do with people like Dr. Joshi and me, because he couldn't be a Rotarian because he is a Lion. So Lion can't be a Rotarian, and he refused to quit the Lion job, the Lion Club. And so we both, together with His Excellency, the President of the country, who was always an honorary member of our club, but Mukesh Joshi and I, we persevered. The presidents have changed since then many times, but we were always honorary members. And it didn't change. I mean, I was honorary member for about 10 years before anybody said, by the way, would you like to join? Yeah, why not? I could become a proper Rotarian then. So anyway, it was funny, but there we are. Mukesh Joshi and I. This is the next thing during my husband's year and not president, as a chairman. One night we get a phone call from Sweden, and he said, this gentleman said, I'm Chair Magnusson. I would like to give you an aeroplane. Okay, how do you think you do that? Well, if you could come to my district conference, I will explain everything. But he said, we've got the funds almost together. But he said, we need somebody. Oh, I forgot to tell you, the project, the eye project was canceled because there was bad publicity about Kenya, where everything goes into somebody's pocket. And of course, quite rightly, the German and Netherlands and Belgium and English Rotarians were very concerned that their hard-earned money would end up in some politicians' pockets. So I was now the guarantor for the fact that every penny would go into cataract operations. And it worked, and it's still working. But here, of course, he said, I just really need a face to put to the club where we are donating this aeroplane. And so we were a little bit taken aback. Why an aeroplane? So then we talked to one of his Rotarians who said, I have visited Kenya so many times, and every time, he was a journalist, every time I get off a plane, I'm told, where is the doctor? Why didn't you bring a doctor? And this is, of course, a problem. So now we are getting an aeroplane. Well, what an excitement. But he said, please, you must come to my district conference. Well, from Kenya to Sweden, we go. So we went there, and we were guests of honor together with the RI representative and the state's representative and the royal correspondent on the right. And we were given, mine is still packed up somewhere, but we were given this thank you plaque from the district governor for visiting my Rotary conference. Now, there, I thought, what I have to do is I can't just go there and say thank you. So I took a crash course in Swedish, and I did what I could, delivered a 20-minute speech to say thank you, to explain why this is a worthwhile project. And obviously they understood me, because the next day, this was the headline in the newspaper with my picture attached to it, "The Face of Grace and Gratitude." Imagine that. So it was a huge success. And this aeroplane lived in Kenya for probably about 30 years. And of course, aeroplanes have a lifespan that can or cannot be stretched out. So anyway, that was that. But the next headline was this. And we were sitting in Malmö knowing absolutely nothing. And as guests of honor, we were taken around everywhere to horse breeding farms, all sorts of beautiful places. Everything was so spick and span. And I said to my husband, you know, all the horses are lying down. How can they lie down? I mean, we had our own 6 horses at home. If a horse lies down, you call the vet because the horse is going to die. And there, all the fields we were passing by car, the horses were lying down. So we didn't know. Nobody could give us the answer. And of course, the world didn't know the answer for almost a week that Chernobyl had blown up. And we were right in the middle of the plume that was coming over. And Malmö, south of Sweden, got hit really, really badly. So anyway, now back to the aeroplane. The aeroplane was not in Sweden, it was delivered to England. But anyway, so my husband said, you know, it would be great fun if we could pick it up. Okay, you can't be serious. He said, yeah, it's just like our plane, same thing. I mean, you can even fly it, not a problem. We can, you know. I said, for starters, what about toilet facility? You know, it's a little 6-seater. There's nothing there. There's 6 seats, and that's your lot. But he said it would be fun. I said, you know, after a day, I think we would stop laughing. When we have blisters on our bottoms, and when we're dehydrated, and when we can't go to the toilet, and we have no food, and we stranded somewhere in the desert because the fuel has run out, where we thought we could pick it up, and they don't have any, I threw in everything I could to not have to go on this trip with him. So eventually he sort of agreed, and we got some other young people, and they loved the trip. Again, when they arrived in Nairobi, of course, there was a big reception. The Swedish ambassador, the Minister for Health from Kenya, they were all there at the airport. They opened the door. The first thing that rolls out is toilet paper. So they had the problem that I had anticipated. But it was a wonderful aeroplane. It was called the Helping Rotary. And everybody in Kenya knew about this plane for decades, the Helping Rotary. What a great idea they had in Sweden. Now then, Lars Bohr, who was a journalist, and he actually had the idea first to have an aeroplane for Kenya, he came back and he said, you know, we have to get down to this. We have to elaborate on this, because only having an aeroplane doesn't work. Let's just also make sure we get the doctors to go with it. So long story short, on that veranda at that time, the Swedish Doctor Bank was created. And he went back with all his notes, with all his ideas, and it worked like a charm. And it still works today. And an offspring of that is, of course, the dental clinic in Kilimanjaro, where Kathleen and her husband are the absolute masters of the game. I mean, they almost own the place. Everything that happens there happens because of them. And this is how projects can sort of go out and have tentacles everywhere in places where you don't believe it. And the Swedish doctors are now not only Swedish doctors, but the Swedish doctors were the first. And they felt so much like at home that in the middle of the desert, where they were stationed for 6 weeks, they built a sauna. So we have 17 saunas in the desert in Kenya, because the Swedish doctors come there and they'd like to have their creature comfort. And this is Lars Bohr, the gentleman who really had, whose brainchild this is. And of course, it has its own newspaper, it has everything. Then, of course, in between this, not only district governor visit, but almost every other RI president comes to Kenya because they love the place. So this was Ed Cutman during our year, during my husband's year, and again, and Friedel was invited. And then, of course, in between, after Sweden, we thought, well, Sweden and Las Vegas are relatively close. So my husband, being the avid traveler, he said, you know, we go to Sweden and then we just hop over to Las Vegas. Okay. But it turned out that he had to go back to Kenya. I had to go to England and to Germany. So eventually we finished up both meeting again in London. And that was the one with the meeting with the heart, just for Bob's information. And so he was hiding when I arrived in London, and he should have been there, and I can't find him anywhere. There is this huge paper heart or cardboard heart. And I look and don't see my husband. Eventually he lifted up and it's him. So he was waiting behind the heart for me, and we were off to Las Vegas after that. And that was Las Vegas, of course, big and beautiful. Next convention was in Munich the year after. We went from Las Vegas, Munich, Melbourne, Nice, Singapore, etc. So we had a lot of interesting information, interesting experiences. Now, I'm running short of time. This is something that you all know about and that you've all heard about, because from one moment to the next, life changed and snuffed out in Kenya when this horrific terror attack happened. And one of our friends, one of our very dear Rotarians, he'd been in Kenya and in our club for 2 years. He was Julian Bartley, and he was dear to all of us. He was the worst joke teller ever, because he always gave you the punchline first before he told you the joke. And we loved him for it. And we had so much fun with him. And he was on the phone to one of our Rotarians, because this was on the Friday. On the Sunday, we were starting the polio eradication drive. And all the vaccinations were there, and his car was being used, and his wife's car was being used, and other embassy cars. So suddenly the line goes dead, and he vanished. We didn't know for a while. The tragedy is, in addition, that his son was doing an internship at the same time, and his son's body was found relatively quickly, but Julian's body was not found for a long time. All we knew that about 2 houses away, they found his lower arm, and they only knew it was him because he had a monogrammed shirt. And that's why we knew he had died. But it took a long time, and it was such a tragedy. And of course, he left behind a wife and a daughter. And we were asked to organize the memorial service in Kenya, in Nairobi. And I was then asked to write about this event. If you want to read what I wrote now that long ago, I will send it to you in an email, because it's very revealing, because there's so many things that happened that are unspeakable. I mean, this young man, he was 20 years old, the son, full of life, full of dreams, full of excitement. And of course, Julian himself had a horrendous career ahead of himself. And this was it. This was what it looked like. And the ambassador herself, Prudence Bushnell, she actually had a meeting at 10:30 up on the top floor of this building here on the left. She was quite seriously injured from flying glass, but she survived. I don't show you the picture where she's rescued, but she was, this is how they were looking for remains and for survivors, not many survivors. One big problem was that there was a lot of paperwork flying about. And now the American government, which was Bill Clinton at the time, sent out an army just to safeguard their paperwork. And they were, I'm sorry to say, brutal in respect of fighting to keep the papers together. So anybody who was found with a piece of paper in their hand down the road wasn't treated kindly. But you can see how much paper there is. It's the whole embassy that was blown up and out there. So on the top floor is where the ambassador had her meeting, and that's why she survived. If the meeting had been a little later, she would have been in the embassy, of course. So they were buried at Arlington. Two beautiful silver coffins were sent for them, and they were buried in Arlington, father and son. Bob and I have our own memories from the memory garden, because 9 years later, the government opened a memory garden. The embassy has now been moved out and is absolute Fort Knox. I mean, you can only get in there if you have everything, all the credentials and all the invitations and everything. But at the old embassy in the middle of town, Bob and I, we wanted to visit it. And so we went out there, parked the car. It was between Christmas and New Year, so that there wasn't much traffic. We go into this memorial garden, and I meet a woman who died in my arms. I mean, we tried to save her life for about maybe an hour, and she died in my arms. We were both kneeling there with her. Bob couldn't do anything more. I couldn't save her, and she was dead. And I had her blood everywhere, all over me. And the guards out there called me the angel of the memorial garden. And we could, after that, go there whenever we wanted. We would always get a parking space that was reserved only for us. So they were really kind. Problem was, it turned out after the post-mortem that she had AIDS. So I had been covered in everything. All my clothes, my hair, everything was covered in her blood. But I'm still AIDS-free, so somebody up there had been with me. And then I think we have to stop here because the time is up. That's just let's finish with my farewell to John. When he died, he had a glioblastoma, and he, of course, had surgery, and the surgery didn't work. And we had to say farewell eventually, but all our friends who came together to have this farewell party, we had balloons, hundreds of them, and we always, on every one of them, we stuck an envelope with money at the string and then let them go. And so we thought it's a nice way to say goodbye, and it's a nice way to memorize him, even for people who don't know him. I think this is a good place to stop. The rest is for some other time, maybe. Sorry, I knew I'd run out of time. I always run out of time.
It's amazing. Got it. Got it.
Thank you.
It's amazing, the stories, stay here, Friedel, that just incredible, you know, just the little bit of time that we had here and the stories that you have going back 40 years in Rotary. Thank you for sharing. I think it's been wonderful. As you know, it's our tradition to donate a book to the Logos Academy. So we are going to do that in your honor. I'm going to get you to sign this after our meeting. And I think right now, Tim wants to get a picture of us. So, Friedel, just out of curiosity, how much more is there? How much more is there?
This much again.
You have this much more. Let's give Friedel one more big round of applause. I want to thank the visitors that came this morning. I think it's great that you came to hear Friedel's story. So thank you for coming. It's great to see you and have you here in our club. So you're welcome back at any time. I don't really have anything else for the good of the cause. We will, yes, Connie. Well, we can look to schedule part 2. Yes, we'll look at some open dates and see when Friedel can finish up the rest of her presentation. So we will look to do that. Yes. With that, I hope everybody has a great day, a great week, and we'll see you again next week.